What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of Rip the Net. Coming at y'all a little bit different this week. As you can see, we can finally see our faces, man. This is the identity reveal episode. So we are excited to be with y'all this week. How are y'all doing?
Yes, we're switching it up, leveling up the game, We always wanted to do this, but now we feel like it's the right time. The seasons are ending. We're gonna have to go to some little bit of different content as the summer hits, but why not do it with visuals, see our ugly faces.
We are. That's crazy. Oh man, doing swell, great week. New content, new format. I'm all here for it.
Word. Okay. That's what's up. Well, before we hop into some depressing news, I thought it'd be cool to just start with a very weird, something that's a little different. We don't really touch on MLB content. We don't really talk about baseball all that much on this podcast, but something that I did think was cool. There was a recent announcement that the Polo Grounds Stadium, which those who follow baseball, if you follow baseball, or if you are a sports historian, as corny as that sounds, man, the Polo Grounds was an iconic stadium that was around in the late 1800s up until the early 1900s. And so just for context, that's where the New York Giants played. So that was a baseball team that existed in New York City, and that stadium was around between, I believe, until 1963. So that was hosted the New York Giants, hosted the New York Mets for their first two seasons as a franchise. The Giants ended up moving out to San Francisco, and then the Brooklyn Dodgers also moved out to LA, as we know. Point is, New York Mets were a franchise that were created as a result of those two franchises leaving, and they had their first two seasons in the Polo Grounds Stadium. And so, just for context, Babe Ruth played at this stadium on the Yankees for a couple of years as well. So just an overall iconic stadium. Willie Mays, who's MLB Hall of Famer, had his really famous catch in dead center field. I guess the big cool thing about this stadium was that no one ever hit a home run out to dead center field because it was so deep, because it was so far. But it's just an iconic stadium that they are rebuilding, and those who follow baseball know that they recently opened up the Field of Dreams stadium. So after the movie, it's inspired by the movie, and they had these cool little couple of games that were played there. And so now they've announced that they are going to be building a Polo Grounds replica in Pelham Bay Park. So if you're a native New Yorker, this is going to be in one of the biggest parks in the Bronx. So I don't know. I just thought it was some exciting news. I believe it's set to open in 2027. So in a few years, we'll have a new Polo Grounds little replica, and they'll be playing there a couple of games out there. I just thought it was cool, man. The sports nerd in me thought this was some cool news, but looking forward to potentially catching a game out there because that's an iconic stadium. And I always read about it in books. It's Babe Ruth played there. That's pretty cool, but yeah, just a little side nugget. Not sure if you guys would want to make your way out to a game, but I know I will definitely try to catch one out there.
Not for me, bro. I'll wear the hats, but that's all. That's all with baseball. Me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Baseball, they're lucky that's called a sport, honestly. But and they get paid a lot, crazy money, crazy money. I honestly still to this day don't understand exactly the history of why baseball gets paid so much. I'll be curious to look into that, but. Hey, more respect to them. I ain't gonna pocket watch. You get your money just standing around for about 3 hours, however long that goes. And all the people in the stands aren't even watching the game. They're all just singing songs, looking at the jumbotron, and eating hot dogs. But it's all good, bro. It's
Bunch of glizzy gobblers, bro. Come be me.
Man. Every baseball game I've ever been to, I don't even remember looking at the game once, bro. We just singing along to the songs. I ain't gonna lie. Overpriced food and all that.
Singing along to the songs.
whatever random stuff they put up on the screen, that's all I care about. I'm not watching the game. Like, come on, bro. I'm not trying to fall asleep in the stadium. I ain't get robbed or something. Like, nah. I'm good off that. But still, this is dope to hear because I feel like it's not guaranteed that within your lifetime you see transitions like this. Like, I think maybe it's going to happen more often in our lifetime because maybe the advancements and like infrastructure are going to advance way quicker than we might think. But I feel like in the past you would see teams will have a stadium or arena, whatever, for hundreds of years, or at least 800 years. So if you see a new stadium come in, that's like a really historical moment that you might not have seen.
100%. Yeah, no, really valid point. Fenway Park, for example, is one of the oldest stadiums in the entire league, and so they opened up in 1912. So that stadium's been around for over 100 years, and still managed to stay open. So, props to that. But Polo Grounds was around when Fenway opened. That just shows you how old and how much time it's been since that stadium was around. And so it was the stadium in New York before Yankee Stadium, before Shea Stadium, before Citi Field and all that came along. So I don't know. I just thought it was really cool. I'll definitely make my way out there. And the fact that it's in the Bronx, kind of a little bit cooler. So yeah, I'm excited. But I will ignore all the baseball disrespect. I'm not gonna act like I'm the biggest baseball fan, but playoff time, that's what I'll say. If you are ever interested, if you ever want to see what the hype is on the sport, watch a playoff baseball game. It's intense. It's super intense. So I don't know. That's all I'll say on that. But for the first topic of today, man, we're gonna recap the conference finals, the Western Conference Finals and the Eastern Conference Finals. And man, these past couple of episodes, I was feeling hopeful. I think by the time we had last week's episode, I was still feeling good and I was still feeling all right. But it was definitely it was a hard watch, this entire series. But we can start in the Western Conference Finals, just because I think we will have less to say on that, just because it wasn't as intense of a series. I had the Thunder making it out. Dre, did you have the Wolves coming out?
I did.
Okay, man. Listen, man, as soon as these playoffs started, man, I was like, we cannot sleep on this Thunder team, and they're in the finals. It took them 5 games. They pretty much mopped the floor. And they're on their way to their first finals since, I believe, the Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden Thunder. So, it's been a time coming. These have now been deemed the Paul George finals. We can get into that a bit later. But yeah, man, how did you feel about the series? Anything that you learned, anything that you saw that caught your eye?
Absolute snooze fest. Oh my god. I hate to be that guy, but let's be real. Well, okay. I don't want to hate on these finals because I do like the Pacers and I like what they offer. So I know we're gonna get into that matchup in a bit. So this is not like some hate on small market teams or anything like that. It's more the Thunder, and more specifically SGA. There's a reason why Doris Burke is spamming the free throw merchant agenda on these broadcasts. And now I'm not saying that's all there is to SGA. I actually have a soft spot for SGA, former Clipper. But I just couldn't bring myself to get invested in this team watching them play in this series. And especially for a team that seemed like from day dot in the season, this is a team that was destined to make it to this point. You would think at some point along the way you would be like, okay, I'm accepting that this is going to happen. Let me at least get on board with this narrative, or I guess at least get excited for this potential. But for me, it's just like it just doesn't hit. It's kind of like the Celtics last year, where like before the season even started, we knew, okay, Boston's clearly the best team in the NBA, and it almost felt like a foregone conclusion that they were going to end up winning the title, and of course they did. And there was like nothing really exciting along the way for that. The Thunder, I feel the same way about them. So it's not like exclusive to the Thunder. And for me, Boston, OKC would have been the worst finals matchup possible just because of that. Like I feel like these are teams that, and shout out to their organization in terms of team building and team like the depth on these teams. They're very well constructed teams, but I feel like that's not the most entertaining in terms of from a neutral perspective. I don't want to see the perfect team. I want to see a team that has flaws and that need superstars to overcome those flaws, not in terms of getting to the free throw line, spamming, yelling out into the sky. Oh, and you didn't even get touched. Like, for me, I don't know. I know I'm going to sound like a hater. I genuinely have no hate in my heart for SGA. Like, I know he'd be aura farming, whatever, but to me, it's just funny more than anything. But actually seeing, and I didn't watch every game because after game 2, I was like, yeah, this is cooked, bro. Like, there's nothing really to watch here. But even the ones that I did watch, like, it was hard for me to even finish the games. It wasn't pleasurable to even watch. And I think that's more of a commentary on the NBA in 2025 than anything, because I feel like older basketball was just more fun to watch. Call me an old head, whatever. But to be fair, on the other side, I know for you, Eric, it wasn't the outcome you wanted, but you did get to see some excitement in those series. I know people will say what they want about Jalen Brunson and him also maybe being free throw merchant number 2, but those series had things in them that I was like, it started to bring that NBA fan out of me again. Whereas versus the Thunder and Timberwolves, I was like, I want Ant to do well, but like he's getting cooked here. Basically, gentlemen swept. I don't really care, and we move on. So,
yeah, that's a good point. I definitely agree with a couple of the points that you made. I also feel like the Thunder are going to be running away with it. I think that's why I'm not excited for these finals. I've been seeing a lot of videos of, if you're not a real NBA fan, like, or if you're not excited for these, you're not a real NBA fan, like you're just a fan of the big markets. First off, I think I am very justified in feeling disengaged with these finals, considering how close my Knicks were to making it, but that's another story for a couple of minutes. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. But my thing with the Thunder is that, yes, they have had a crazy season. And I know you said you wouldn't have wanted the Celtics. I think as happy as I was to see the Knicks knock the Celtics out, I think the Celtics and the Thunder would have probably had the most competitive series out of, all the options that we could have gotten. Out of all the potential finals matchups that we could have gotten, I thought Thunder and Boston would have probably given us the best matchup. And so I was a little bit let down to see that, okay, they're facing a very young, inexperienced team that, yes, made it to the conference finals last year, but beyond that, I think everyone saw that run as a fluke. Everyone didn't really believe, like when the Pacers beat the Knicks last year and advanced to the conference finals, most people considered it to be a fluke. And so a team that has not had a lot of experience at the very top is now on the big stage. I just don't see them really making much noise, and I think if we talk about, okay, this Thunder Wolves series, I think the problem was just the point I had made prior to the series was that I didn't believe in the Wolves' lack of perimeter defending, and I think that really showed out. And you saw that everyone on the Thunder was able to really have a big game. You had SGA, you had Jalen Williams, you had Chet Holmgren. They really showed out, and like they showed that they are a deep team, and they have a lot of people on that team that can score 20 points. They can give you more than 20 points in one game. So I thought it was kind of, from the jump, I was like, all right, if they're this deep and all that the Wolves have to depend on is Anthony Edwards, like this is not going to be a sustainable series. So yeah, it was over in 5 games. It was over quick. Props to the Wolves for getting one game out, and it was a blowout. So props to them. But, I think it was over from the start. And I think the Wolves have to look themselves in the mirror and think, man, like yes, they've been making it far, but like that roster has got to change. And I want to see Ant in the finals. So like I want them to make the moves, you know. So Julius Randle, love the guy, former Knick, but put up 5 points in an elimination game. Like, what's that really gonna, you know? Is that really gonna be your second punch, like your second man up, beyond Anthony Edwards? Like, I don't know. I feel bad for that franchise. There's rumors out there that Naz Reid, who's the starting center, or one of the big men on the roster, like may want out, like may opt out during free agency. So who knows what that franchise has ahead. I feel like they're either very close to taking that extra step, or they're a summer away from completely dismantling. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, props to the Thunder, man. They're deep, they're young, so we'll see what happens. But we've been teasing, we've been making slight comments about this Eastern Conference Finals matchup. Any of your thoughts? I know I've been talking a lot about the Knicks, but I want to see what you're, from an unbiased perspective, what did you see as this series played itself out?
And the Knicks became Team Chalamet, man. That's what I saw.
Dang, that hurts.
That's your team. That's your fandom.
That is your fandom. That's literally your fandom. I'm seeing more about on ESPN about Timothy Chalamet and Kylie Jenner than Jalen Brunson and Kat, bro. It's actually kind of crazy. It's kind of wild. Like, I never thought I'd see the day. Spike can't even get some camera time, bro. Like, they're actually all over Timothy Chalamet. Like, I know he's Lisa Nagai, but damn, bro. Damn. They're feeding for this guy.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And I don't know. Call me a hater. All I kept seeing was like, oh, his outfits are amazing. I didn't think his outfits were that crazy. Like,
bro went through Travis's old closet, grabbed anything blue and orange, and
Travis's old closet's crazy.
It was just like chrome hearts and like like some Tims, you know, which I get that's kind of the style right now, but like I don't know, a lot of those outfits I just did not understand, and maybe I'm just not, you know, fit for the fashion world. But
nah, man, just blue and orange looks nasty together. I think, like, for a fit, it just doesn't look good like that.
Orange and blue sky. Orange and blue sky.
I won't agree with that, man. I won't agree with that. I thought, like, and maybe it's basic, but like the Knicks had a collection with Kith. So just like quick context.
Whack.
Ronnie Fig. Fig?
Fig.
Ronnie
Feig.
Feig? Ronnie Feig? Is it Feig?
I'm pretty sure it's Feig.
It's
Feig or Feig. It ain't Fig.
Yeah, probably not Fig.
Ronnie Feig, that guy. The guy who owns Kith. The guy who owns Kith. He is the creative director of the New York Knicks. So the fact that they had a Kith collab these past couple of years, and they have their city edition jerseys were designed by him. So it isn't a surprise that they had a Kith collab. I thought the pieces that came out of that collection were nice. Like, we could, you know, we don't have to get into it all right now.
That's a whole other discussion. Kith, like, I got a lot of thoughts on them.
Okay, next week we're doing the state of Kith.
Yeah, like,
that's what we're doing.
Like that. Let's do that. I don't know. I thought it was good. I thought it was cool. Even went to the flagship store the other day. It was actually, I think, before game one. I think I went into the store in Soho before game one. Super excited. I had seen the Knicks collection before, but just like I was just like, let me just like take a quick look inside. And man, it looked cool, and I'm really glad I didn't come out with anything. I'm really glad I didn't buy anything, because considering how that series went, I'm upset. But let's talk about the series now. Yes, all we saw was Timothy Chalamet. Let's talk about the court, man. What was really going on? What really happened? What do you guys think?
That's a great question. What really happened, bro? All I was seeing was
that's crazy.
Tyrese. Now we got the camera. We can go crazy, bro. Tyrese Halliburton before coming into the series, if I remember correctly, you predicted the Knicks and maybe in 6. I think you were debating 5, and you're like, you don't want to be disrespectful, so you said 6, something like that. And I said Pacers in 6 or 7. I probably said no. I think I said Pacers in 6, and I said if it goes back to the Garden for 7, the Knicks are going to take it. So one of my rare spot-on predictions, but still, coming into this series, I said I feel like Tyrese Halliburton. There's room for him to really ascend with this series, especially against the Knicks. The history that the Pacers and the Knicks have going back decades at this point, I feel like there's really room for him, especially because I think most people will consider Brunson the better player, especially coming into the series, to really stamp his name, especially with those overrated comments as well coming into the playoffs. He really has something to prove. I remember we had the discussion, and I still think that's a relevant discussion, with Tyrese Halliburton and his ability to, I guess, lack of ability to show up consistently every game in the points column. I feel like that's one of his biggest deficiencies. And even in this series, you saw the game that I think it was game 5 they lost. He only scored 8, I think. So that's proof. Goes straight to your point that you made at the time, that like he has those games in him. But for me, Halliburton, and I don't want to just talk about Halliburton, to be fair, because it really was a group effort from the Pacers, especially that was the game 1 was the big comeback where I forget his Naismith, who was making those crazy Naismith. He was making like, I don't remember how many threes in a row, bro. He went absolutely ballistic, lost his mind. I thought I was seeing Tracy McGrady reincarnated for a second there, bro. It was crazy. I knew you were absolutely boiling. I had to text you at the time. I was laughing. Oh my god, it was so funny. But that, to be fair, you can't say that was all Halliburton, but the team really came back there. But Halliburton himself, for me, he's not a player that can be completely contained by the points column. Like his game, especially because he's a point guard, I feel like in the last 10 years we've seen so many of these hybrid point guards who are really 2 guards, but they just bring the ball up the court. So we like calling them point guards, but then you see James Harden on the, like when he's on the Rockets. James Harden, of course, is a shooting guard, but really in a lot of those scenarios, especially before Chris Paul was there, he is effectively the point guard on that team, but he's also dropping 35 a night. So I feel like the perception around point guards, Russell Westbrook became the triple-double monster and all these kind of things, was like the point guards have to drop 25 a night minimum to be on a certain level. And I feel like Halliburton is bringing back a more traditional style of point guard play. Of course, he can still shoot and do other things as well, but I feel like his playmaking and his effect on the game, even if he's not scoring, just the way teams have to defend because of his vision, to me, that's what I was most impressed by. Even though, and he had the big games too. He had the 30-point games, all that. He had the clutch shot that really could have been a game winner and ended up sending it to overtime. But still, just the fact that he made that shot in that scenario, when like I remember I was watching that game live, and I think maybe like 30 seconds, maybe a minute before that, Jalen Brunson's like over on the sideline. I think it was Frazier he was hugging up on the side. I forget exactly who he was hugging up on the sideline. Some Knicks veteran that he was like, they were like gas on the side, like, yeah, we took game 1 in the Garden. They were like hugging on the sideline, and I was like, bro, what is this, bro? Like the game's not over. And then literally 2 minutes later, send it to overtime and complete collapse, absolute collapse from the Knicks. And then I think that just set the tone for the series. I never thought after that game the Knicks were really in it. And that sounds crazy because there were a lot of close games and it went 6 games in the end. So you can say at the end of the day it was a close series. But for me, there's something about one, momentum, and 2, when teams go up like 3-1, even if it goes 6, I never feel like, oh, they're this close. Oh, they can do it. I always feel like those teams that are up, especially when they hit 3-1, they kind of take their foot off the gas a little early. You don't see like that same hunger that means that they probably could have got them out of there in a gentleman's sweep or less potentially. Like the Thunder weren't playing around. They wrapped that up. But I know I'm yapping. I really do want to hear what you got to say. But for me, I thought that was a real coming out party for Tyrese Halliburton. And I'll let you talk about the Knicks because they have their own issues to deal with.
Yeah. All right. Well, to acknowledge what you said about Halliburton, to acknowledge the Pacers, fair play. I really like what you said about Halliburton being kind of like that true point guard, because it's very true. His playmaking was off the charts. He had, I think it was like 63 assists, something like that, 62, 63 assists his entire series, man. So he was really playing his tail off. So respect to him. Do I hate Halliburton after this series? I 100% do. Going into this, I was like, man, I don't get the Halliburton hate. I don't understand it. Like, I was like, I see he's cocky, but he's young, man, and he's kind of like that uprising star. Like, I don't mind somebody being a little bit charismatic, a little bit animated on the court. But yo, that choke gesture after game one, during game one, when he sent it to overtime. And it was funny too, because I get that there's no way to prove this, so you could if you want to say I'm lying, whatever. I was like, man, it would be funny to see a choke gesture. I feel like Halliburton would have been the type to do that. And so when he did it, I was just my blood was boiling, man. My blood was boiling, because it's the way the shot went into. It's also the fact that he doesn't have a conventional jumper. Like, his jumper looks nasty. It looks disgusting. And I like hooping. I think my jump shot is also nasty, but you're a star and your jump shot looks so broken, but it's so effective. At the end of game 6, he had a deep three that he shot from like maybe 5 to 7 feet beyond the arc, and it just was a complete, just like nothing but net. At that point, it was already a blowout. So that was like the final dagger. But it just angered me to see somebody who there were a lot of memes that were coming out, like he hoops like Urkel. He hoops like Urkel in that one Family Matters episode. And listen, man, my blood was boiling. Seeing how deep of a team that is, and I think that's okay. Game 1, that collapse. Yes, I think they could have defended Neesmith better. There were a lot of things that could have gone differently. Karl Anthony Towns and OG Anunoby missed 2 essential free throws. Had either of those free throws gone in, Knicks would have won that game. And it's crazy. It's so crazy how 2 missed free throws really like changed the entire trajectory of the series. But if you really want to talk about it, I think what it came down to in game 1 was the fact that team was gassed. Knicks just looked tired to me. It's game 1 and you're already tired. Like, you've been outrun, you've been outplayed and outclassed. This entire series is what I would say also happened. But that first game, they looked so gassed. They looked like they had lost their legs. And so that's why you saw Thibodeau make those changes later on in the series, where he inserts Mitchell Robinson in the starting lineup. He gives Landry Shamet, he gives other people just a few more minutes in the rotation. You saw that he was really depending on more than just 8 players, right? He was depending on more than just 8 players. So at the end of the day, Pacers had a deeper team. Now, if you want to talk about what did the Knicks do incorrectly, I think there was a lot of inconsistency from Karl Anthony Towns. There was inconsistency from Mikal Bridges. There was inconsistency from Josh Hart. And I love Josh Hart. Josh Hart's my favorite Knick. I see a lot of Knicks fans calling for either a Bridges trade or a Karl Anthony Towns trade. Some even a Josh Hart trade, which I think is crazy. He just had a career year. But it's tough. What changes do I want to see made? I really don't know if I can answer that question right now. I think it was very clear that the Knicks lost a lot of their defensive tenacity with that Karl Anthony Towns trade last year. They don't have the same perimeter defending that they had last year. They're not as scary of a team on the defensive side. They're a lot better offensively. Granted, our offense is what shot us in the foot this year. That's because they couldn't because someone besides Brunson wasn't able to consistently drop points, yes, that is why we got eliminated. But I think it all goes down, or all comes back to the defensive tenacity. And there's a couple of players that I've been like wondering, like, that I want to see added to the roster potentially. Some like a Jose Alvarado, who's a point guard out of New Orleans. He has a very cheap contract, gets paid like $4.5 million a year. I think adding to the second unit, you have some defensive depth who can help, facilitate in the second unit. And I also want an actual center. I don't want Karl Anthony Towns playing the 5 anymore. I need Karl Anthony Towns playing the 4, and I want a true 5. Mitchell Robinson is that, but I'm not sure if I can rely on his health. And I think that's another frustrating thing. The Knicks were fully healthy. The excuse last year was that we all got hurt. Tibbs ran them to the ground. They all got hurt, and because they all got hurt, Pacers took it in 7 games. But you had your entire roster, man, and you got, like I said, outplayed, outclassed, everything. So it hurts, man. I'm upset. I don't know what the Knicks are going to do beyond this. I feel like they're going to want to keep this core together, which I can somewhat understand. But, you really got to look in the mirror and wonder, like, because you're right there, man. You were 2 games away from the finals. You're maybe like 1 or 2 moves away from legitimately being like a team that people can say, yes, this team can win an NBA Finals. And, they're not quite there yet. But all in all, not a disappointment of a season. I think no one expected them to get past Boston. So I still consider that a win, but hurts because I think we were all convinced that they were going to make it to the finals.
Who was we though?
Nah,
Knicks fans?
No. I think there were.
Kylie?
I think the entire NBA world had the Knicks coming out on top. I don't care what anybody says.
Nah, it was the internet, bro.
You could call me delusional. I still think the Knicks are a better team. I think they got out. Like I said, they just got outplayed and outclassed, which you could say about the Boston series, but. It hurts, man, because that really should be us, man. That really should be us.
Outside looking in, the nearly men.
What's up?
I said always on the outside looking in. The nearly men, man. You're just the nearly men.
It's okay.
Not
man.
quite there.
Listen. This was, I will say, I had not felt this type of happiness as a basketball fan ever, bro. Melo never took us this far. So am I supposed to be mad right now? Yes. Am I? 100%. But I also got to look in the mirror and realize, listen, 12-year-old me, bro, middle school me would have never, we really wanted this so bad. And back in that, like, during the Knicks, the Carmelo Anthony, Stoudemire, Chandler, J.R. Smith Knicks, they got bounced by Indiana too. What's up?
I said Linsanity.
Nah, Linsanity was like a little bit before that, but Linsanity was maybe like a year before that. Best time. No, Knicks were like an 8th seed that year.
No, the vibes were crazy. I'm not even a Knicks fan, bro. The vibes were
stretch though. That was like a 10 to 12 game stretch.
I went to a game in that stretch, and the vibes in MSG were just off the charts. But yeah, continue. Yeah. I cut you off.
I agree. I believe it. But the thing about the fact that Carmelo could not take the Knicks this far, and now we have Jalen Brunson, and we're going to have this core and this nucleus for a few years. That's a little bit encouraging. I think you can figure out some chemistry issues. There were reports that also came out about Karl Anthony Towns' defense and like Knicks players being frustrated with his lack of effort, and Knicks coaches as well. So that's a somewhat of an interesting storyline to keep in, like, to kind of just continue to look over, continue to watch. I think Cat's gonna stay on that roster. He's the most expensive contract. He's basically like untradeable. But it just sucks, man, because it's to get to that point with a fully healthy roster, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be tough, but we'll recover, man, and through and through, man, through and through, orange
Through
and
and
blue.
through. Orange and blue skies. A little cloudy these days, man. That's all I'm saying. Going to the series, I remember you mentioning Jalen Brunson being the clutch player of the year. I remember I said, Hallie's not too bad himself in those moments, not too bad himself. So I just want to give my respect once again. Tyrese Halliburton, overrate that. One of the best NBA tweets in a long time. You got to respect him. The finals, I know we might get into that. I don't know how much further this run's going to go. But, yeah, next year, the Knicks, just to wrap up the Knicks segment, I'm very curious, one, how they'll, I guess, supplement this team. I guess we could do a little. It's not really a rebuild, so we could do a little how the Knicks improve over the summer. We can do an episode where we include that. I know you want to get into your GM mode, but I'm very curious to see next year. I feel like there's a window here in the fact that they beat Boston. That's going to be tough. Although I remember you mentioning with the whole salary cap situation that we're not going to see the same Boston either in the coming years, but I feel like that momentum, like taking him through the Boston series and into this series, I feel like there was something like lightning in a bottle that felt like was happening in the city. Even though I wasn't on that hype train, it was unavoidable. And I wonder, now that you lost in this fashion, what that energy is going to be like next year. Will it galvanize everyone and be like, okay, let's run it back, we were this close? Or is it going to be like, damn, we always fall apart at some point? Maybe it's a little demoralizing. I don't know.
The Inter Milan of the NBA, man.
Nah, New York will always show out, man, and that's one thing, man. New York fans are delusional, and I had my moments of delusion this season, these playoffs. But they're gonna show out, man. I actually happened to be around MSG after Game 5, which is the game that they won, and people came out like, people were out here chanting Knicks in 7. Like, people were really feeling it. So, they're still gonna show out, man. There's nothing that can convince me that the Knicks do not have the best NBA fan base in the entire league. The blank stares are crazy. but
it's just funny. It's funny because, well, one, I feel like that's subjective, so I'm not going to argue down and say no, they don't. But still, coming from you, it's impossible to really like evaluate that statement of whether or
with
not
the bandwagon that we just saw across the internet.
That's, and I feel like we.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's no other fan base that would burn down an entire city.
The PSG fans, literally.
Oh,
literally.
I don't know. I don't like them, so I don't want to give them their credit. But I feel like we didn't get to live through the true heyday. I guess we got to see a bit of the Kobe era, but I don't know. I really wish I could have seen like the Lakers, like the Lake Show in the 80s. I feel like there's something special about when LA's good, like actually good, not like people think they're gonna make the final just because they got Luka good. Like I'm talking about like an actual functioning team. I feel like can be really special, and that's because they're the biggest brand. That's how it tends to go. But so it means they also have the worst fans in a way too. But you say the same about the Knicks. Any team that has the strongest fans also has some of the worst fans. So.
Fair.
Yeah, but I think they're in that conversation.
Fair. Knicks fans, had we won the 2020 championship, had we won the NBA bubble championship, nobody would have cared about the COVID protocols, bro. LA was quiet after they won that shit, but
there's also Mickey Mouse though, like
it don't matter.
Mickey Mouse ring.
Knicks
man.
fans would have showed up to Orlando, man. They would have shown up to Orlando and partied with the players themselves, but
You're saying the Knicks have the dumbest fan base, is what you're saying?
That can also align, man.
Okay.
Those also go hand in hand, and that's okay. You ever seen the MSG prices, man? Insane.
Yeah, the
Actually,
reason why I
don't
go
know.
there.
What have they been?
Well, these playoffs, the cheapest ticket was like, at least for this past series, it was like $612 for like nosebleed seats. It was insane, and they were sold out, bro. Sold out.
You got to be on crack.
Absolutely.
That is
Absolutely correct. $612 to sit that far behind Timothy Chalamet, whatever his name is. Hell no, bro. I got to be right behind him if I'm paying that kind of money, man.
seat comes with a Kylie.
I'm saying something, man. I got to be hugging Spike after the game if I'm paying that kind of money. Ben Stiller got to put me in
next
Severance.
film production or something.
Saying,
Like,
I
yeah,
gotta be in
Stiller.
Severance. Severance season 3, bro. I gotta make a cameo, bro. Something for that kind of money.
Anyways, Jerry, you wanna move on?
Yeah. I wanna. I was just letting that moment simmer because it's only potentially once a year I get to see some anger out of you. Not that you're actually angry and you're going crazy, but just I can feel the disappointment. I can feel the salt like emanating through the screen. Although I still think you are generally objective when it comes to your analysis, but I can tell it's burning you up inside. And I'm just gonna take another 10 seconds before we move to the next segment to really sit on that and to think about how the Knicks got clapped by Halliburton with the broken jump shot and the choke emote. Bro dropped the Fortnite celly on you mid-game. Oh my god, that's crazy. Anyway, enough of that. You said what?
I said orange and blue through and through.
Hey man, well we saw 2 Fortnite sellies this week because that second one was in the Champions League final, man. Dre,
Yeah,
I'll let you continue. I set that up.
W segue. But yeah, Champions League final. Wow, what a game is what I wanted to say. Oh my god. 5-0, bro. 5-0. PSG absolutely annihilated, demolished, destroyed.
Embarrassed.
Embarrassed. Like they're about to send Inzaghi to Saudi, bro. It's crazy. We got a lot to talk about, but let's just set the stage.
Yeah.
Going into this game, we talked about this before the game. We had a little preview episode. Who's going to win this game? Inter Milan, PSG. To me, this was an amazing 50-50 final. Who's going to win it? Amazing attack, amazing defense, the magic we saw in the Barca game, the dominance we saw against Arsenal. Just two really strong teams who really, over the course of the tournament, were probably the two best teams. I mean, Barca, very unlucky. You say Barca was the third, and those three were consistently at the top. But I think how the tournament played out, it made sense that we got these two teams in the final if it wasn't going to be Barca PSG. So we did our predictions. We all picked Inter to win this game. I know it was a little... It wasn't like the most confident prediction necessarily, but based on what we had seen, we thought Inter Milan, they have just enough to get over the line with against PSG. And when I sat down to watch that game, I never expected Inter Milan to look that bad. That has to be one of the worst Champions League finals performances I've seen probably in my time watching soccer. Yeah, in my entire time watching soccer. The only thing that comes close, it's not even from a team, it's from a single player, is the Carriers final, where they were against Real Madrid. Like that's up there, but that's a single player who threw it for the entire team. This is an entire team collapsing on the grandest stage of them all.
From the first minute. From the first minute. Nothing even happened. Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, literally. I never saw it coming, but let's give them their flowers. PSG, champions of Europe. It's been a long time coming. They've had a project that's been maybe 15 years in the works, if not longer, since the Qataris took over. And they've had a lot of iterations of this team: the Zlatan era, the Cavani, the Neymar era, bringing in Mbappe. Let's throw in Messi in the mix. Why not? Let's just see what happens and see if we can win the Champions League. And it's taken a long time. They finally this year, in the last 2 years, thought, okay, let's maybe slow down on the bringing in the biggest names. I'm not saying they're not spending, because this team is still super expensive in terms of the wage bill. But oh my god, that's a massive spider. But I'm gonna keep going. Uh, in terms of the wage bill, but still, this team and this organization have thought, let's revamp. Let's look more at young French talent to connect with the city of Paris and really bring back a kind of nationalistic pride to PSG. And of course, they still have players from other countries and stuff. But if you even look at those players like Vitinha or Nuno Mensch or Marquinhos, who's been there for like 10 years already, he's really seen all the downs of PSG. And although I'm not the biggest Marquinhos fan, I think he has his faults. I got to be happy that he's seen this triumph. But if you look at those players, if you heard them speak French, you wouldn't even know these dudes are from other countries. Like they love being part of PSG and love this project. And I think that's really important, because you have players who are invested now, not these mercenaries who are coming in for a season or two to try to win the Champions League. These players love the project. They're invested in the project, and they're young. Not Marquinhos necessarily, but the rest of them, they're super young. And of course, they could probably find a way to replace Marquinhos in the next few years. But it really all came together in this final, where 5-0, where you see a bunch of different scorers as well. Everyone, the fluid football. We could talk a lot about the game, but just initial thoughts before I go crazy. Yeah. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, initial thoughts. I mean, just shocked, dude. Shocked. Again, I mean, you already said, but with their performances we saw throughout the tournament, like with full confidence, I'm not a betting man, but if I was like, we are going to get probably one of the best finals of the past 5 to 10 years. After that semifinal performance, I was fully expecting something that legendary. The day before, I was hyping up to friends and family. I got a game to watch tomorrow. It's going to be the best. Y'all got to sit down. Y'all got to watch it. Bro, I feel so bad for those people now. They probably sat down, watched it, like, what is this? But yeah, for a team like Inter to do what they did to Barca, to, rid us of a Barca PSG final, for that performance, for the record of the biggest gap, or like what, I don't even know what you call it, like the biggest win in Champions League history, 5-0. No team before. This is PSG we're talking about. The team which, as you mentioned, tried to have Mbappe, tried to have Neymar, tried to have Messi, all the biggest names, threw all the money they could to try and win it. And now, just like they set a record. It's mind-blowing to me that happened. The possession stats were crazy throughout the game. The shots on target, I'm pretty sure Inter had 0 shots on target until like maybe the 60th minute. Maybe 1 shot on target. I mean, it was just, it was pure dominance by PSG, and they deserved it. I mean, Hakimi was looking like a striker half the game. I mean, that was crazy. Dembele doing his thing. Doué going crazy. Vitinha. I mean, the clips I've seen of Vitinha, like watching the game, it was already crazy, but actually looking back and seeing like how he built these plays, I mean, dude, it was just, you'd think Inter was like the over 40 Sunday league. Like it was awful. You could clearly see the age gap. Once again, my justification for Mkhitaryan leaving Man United is proven. That dude was never it. That dude was subbed off. He's not been it. I don't even know why he's still playing. Get that dude to the MLS and get him his check and get him out of here. But anyways, I think Champions League final, I mean, it was eventful, and I'm happy for PSG, because if they were going to win it, this is how I would want them to win it, with that young team, with that new project, not just throwing money at the wall blindly. But I'm definitely upset in a way because I think I mentioned last episode I was hoping Inter could win it to just see, one of Italian football's teams at the top again. It's been a bit since they last won it, but it's something I wanted to see more consistently. I didn't want it to be a one-time wonder. I want it to be a consistent thing. But here we are now. The Farmers League has made it to the top, and it's something.
You can't disrespect. You're actually one of the people I know that disrespect PSG the most. So honestly, I guess the time has come where you actually you're forced to give them your respect. In terms
I only bring up that night in Paris. That's all I bring up.
Oh my god, that's the
Rashford in that night in Paris, man.
Yeah, you and Rashford in that night in Paris. But
I was not there.
Yeah, okay. Before we go further into this game, because a lot more to talk about, but I don't know if you were able to catch any of it, Eric, over the weekend.
I was working, and I was like, man, I was excited, man. I was like, ooh, something good to watch. I don't know why I work Saturdays, man, but that, neither here nor there. But I was like, man, something cool to watch. As I wind down my day, like I was excited. Man. Yeah. I even had a friend that like invited me to, out to upstate to go watch the game with him, and I couldn't because I was working. I'm really glad I turned down that invitation, man, because that was a boring match, man. A snooze fest, if you ask me. Yeah, I really just wanted a competitive match, and the fact that we didn't get that was a little bit of a letdown. Shout out Lincoln Park, but I just really thought that we would get more out of Inter, considering how the thriller of a match that we saw, or I guess 2 matches that we saw against Barca. I was so excited to see what, even when they were down 3-0, I was like, man, I think they still can have something up their sleeve, but they just weren't clicking. And as Alexi said, they had one shot on target. You just expect more during a Champions League final. And so I am upset at the fact that we didn't get that that payoff that we would have wanted, that thriller of a match that we would have expected for a final. And just so y'all know, man, Alexi, the way you feel is likely how I will be feeling watching these NBA finals, knowing that my Knicks could have made a more intense series, will likely have made these finals a much more entertaining series. I think I think these are parallels here, man. Don't want to bring them up again, but I couldn't help but think about my pain when you said that. So
comparing Barca to the Knicks is indeed crazy.
Man, it's there, man. Don't worry about it. But I don't know, just to imagine Lamine Yamal on that stage, I know that he would have delivered. I know that he would have done at least something, So I was disappointed because I'm like, this is not the most entertaining match that we could have gotten. But I guess it's just the way the cookie crumbled, man.
For sure, definitely crumbled. Inter definitely crumbled, those old legs. But I do fear. Well, I guess 2 things about Barcelona before we get back to Inter and PSG specifically is, one, I do think, I was wondering before this game that PSG might do to Inter what Barca could have done to Inter if they had their fullbacks fit, because Koundé and Balde weren't able to play those semifinals. I think Koundé started the first leg, but he got injured, and Balde didn't play either. And Koundé and Balde are arguably the best fullback pairing in the world. And the other pairing for that argument are Mendes and Hakimi. So the fact that Barca were able to put up 6 goals against Inter without their fullbacks, who were big parts of their attacking play. I think the people who were deputized for them did well too, but it's just not the same. Even saw in the first game, Koundé and Yamal have a special relationship on that right side. So I wonder if Barca was fully fit, maybe we could have seen something similar from them. But still, I think even if they were fully fit and they went up against this PSG team, with that high line, I do fear that PSG still could have put 3 or 4 past Barca, and then we're hoping for a straight shootout with Yamal and Rafinha, Lewandowski, maybe put against 3 or 4 against PSG. But even then, that would have been a way more entertaining game than seeing this complete domination. I guess in the other sense, there is something to be said for winning and playing good football. Because I think Luis Enrique, shout out to him. I'm sure you have your love for him, Eric, for those heydays in Barca. But he truly revamped this team in a way that I can only call a masterclass, and it's true genius. Not only are they winning and dominating games, but it's not like a 1-0, 5-0, and I guess you can still say it's boring because it's one-sided, but 5-0 fluid football. You touched on it, Alexi. Hakimi, the positions he's taking up as a right back, the fact that he finishes off the first goal from Doué, who's on the left, but Doué's playing right wing. He's on the left and squares it to Hakimi in the center, who's the right back. This is your right wing and right back playing left wing and striker in the middle of the game. And that's like not just a one-off. Hakimi's pressing their back line as a right back. You see Kvaratskhelia and Doué are swapping sides constantly because they can both play on either side. Dembele's the false 9. He's dropping back. Vitinha, like you said, to me, I think Doué gets man of the match because 2 goals and an assist is, it's hard to deny.
But Vitinha's close.
Vitinha, in terms of just watching the game, he absolutely ran the show. Like Mkhitaryan, Barella, Chanaloglu couldn't even touch him. Like these guys were just watching him run around the ball. I saw it was 60% possession, like 62 at halftime. It felt like 85, 90%.
Yeah.
Like the domination was just next level, and the position he's pushing forward. Joao Neves is getting forward as well. Fabian Ruiz is going wherever he wants. And then sometimes when the right side is pulled back, then you see Mendes pushing forward on the left. It's really only the center backs that stay in place for PSG. Everyone else just goes where the situation needs them to be. And I think that fluidity, I don't know, maybe next year we see teams try to catch up to it, but it's hard for me to say that they aren't the favorites going into next year because the team is so young and they're only going to get better. And I think truly, I think I mentioned this in our preview or maybe in a previous episode, but the way Enrique has revitalized Dembele's career has been one of the best coaching jobs I've seen from a manager in a long time. And I think other managers who have these players who have fallen off, like Foden, for example, this year, Pep, we're gonna need to see something from you to find ways to get
Pep
Foden
on fraud watch, bro.
You have to find a way to get Foden back on those levels.
Talk about Grealish too. Everyone hyping that dude up. Where's he been the past season?
Where's he been? City has been the worst choices. I mean, for him, he'll probably say, "I won treble and whatever." Trophies, but in terms of actually playing football,
actual career, full length,
one of the worst decisions I've seen from a player. But yeah, Enrique, the way he's revolutionized Dembele into this false 9, who can play either side because he's so two-footed, and getting these wingers who can play either side of the pitch and both are goal hungry, that makes that front 3 so dynamic. And I think it was the third goal, and I think it was the third goal where I was like, okay, game's over. First 2, I was like, it's not looking good, but maybe going into halftime, Inzaghi can make some adjustments. But that third goal, Vitinha carries the ball up, passes it to Dembele. He does the back heel to Vitinha, who carries it back. Perfectly weighted pass through to Doué, who finishes it first time near post Merchant and scores that goal. I was like, okay, Inter's not touching this. This is just the beautiful game on display. And I guess you have to be happy for PSG. But speaking of Dembele specifically, I think I had messaged this to you, Alexi, during the game, or someone I messaged this to. But I feel like Enrique has unlocked Dembele to be the perfect Griezmann replacement for France. Dembele before would play on the wing, and you have Mbappe on the left, or Mbappe maybe in the middle, or Giroud in the middle, Kolo Muani somewhere in there, Coman somewhere in there. But now, if France can play Mbappe on the left, Dembele in the middle as a false 9, and then you can play Doué on the right, you can play Barcola on the right, you can play Coman on the right. You could play Elise on the right. You can,
Oh my god, it's looking scary. It's looking scary.
that World Cup, I don't know who touches this team. Like I genuinely, and they just went to a final when Dembele was cheeks. Now Dembele is arguably the best player in Europe this season, and if he goes into the World Cup on that form, oh my goodness, France is ridiculous. But that's a conversation for another day, because the World Cup leading up to that, that's going to be fun.
That's going to be something. That team will be unstoppable. I do need to shout out though, Kvaratskhelia. I can never say his name right, but bro, his hustle that entire game. I have never seen a player sprint back, win back the ball, and dominate like he did in like the 70th minute when it was already 4-0 or 5-0. It was 4-0, I think, at that point. Like, there was no need to do that. But that is when you are so locked in as a team, when everyone understands the stakes and the job they have to do, and just the amount, it shows how much it matters to them. That no matter what, they're just going to do what they need to do to get it. I feel like you don't see that a lot now. I've complained so many times about Man U in the past. Rashford walking up top, all our forwards walking up top, no one dropping back. That is a real problem, I feel like, with the modern game. But I am so pleasantly surprised that PSG is the team that has let their players shine and bring this energy to the stage. Forget the score, forget even the fact it was a boring game, but having that performance as a team, I mean, like you said, just being able to see that alone, I think makes it satisfying in its own way. But yeah, I'm happy for him as a player too, just seeing how he shined in the Euro Cup, and now here he is with the UCL. I mean, very, very deserving player.
Super deserving. I feel like Kvaratskhelia this season, yeah, I'm always gonna call him that. And he's earned it now. He's earned it.
He's earned it.
He's truly earned it. 'Cause I feel like, and I kind of want to transition this until we talk about like what this means for these two clubs moving forward as well. But talking about PSG's project and the way they've revamped with the young French talent coming in, I felt like this year I thought they were gonna be good, but I thought it was a little early. Like, I think the project probably would have peaked in a year or two, where these players are a little more mature, get some more experience going out in the tournament, like in the semifinals, quarterfinals, whatever. But I think the fact that they added Kvaratskhelia in January was a true statement of intent. And I think that was like the missing puzzle piece to make it like a project team that can win in 2 years, to like, okay, we're actually the best team in Europe right now. I think that, because I think a front three of Doué, Barcola, Dembele is still amazing. That's still like a great front three to have. But then you bring in Kvaratskhelia, so now Barcola is your rotation piece off the bench, and Kvaratskhelia's work rate, like you said, is just unbelievable from a winger. I think every coach in the world wants a winger to play like that. That really advanced PSG, whereas like Inter, to me, I would have said Inter maybe 2 years ago, even when they faced Man City, that was more the peak because the team's a little younger then. But even getting back to the final now, maybe they used all their magic against Barca and they just ran out of steam, or like I've been saying, Goat McTominay, zapped all their energy in Serie A and demoralized them. But with the age of the team, and shout out to them because they do build their team with a lot of free transfers, so it's not the most expensive team ever. So even getting this far has been super impressive. But with the age of the team, you're thinking this might be that last shot, like that last window for these players. A rebuild is now imminent, especially if Inzaghi goes to Saudi. And you're going to see a lot of the best players are start getting phased out. So really you have to depend on Martinez, Thuram. They're still a decent age. Bastoni is going to be like the centerpiece probably of that project. Barella as well, even though he was terrible in the final. But a lot of these other players, DiMarco, terrible. Oh my God, this guy in the final, in the semifinals, first Yamal just toying with him over two legs, and then Doué comes in. He just picks up exactly where Yamal left off and said, "This guy's a scrub." I know he's a wing back and not like a traditional left back, but like you got to defend better than that. And I think it's cool too that Doué and Yamal are both like super inspired by Neymar, and you could tell from their play styles, especially their aggression, their showmanship, and DeMarco wanted no parts of that over these I guess 3 games. But Inter, it's a shame, but I really don't see how they come back next year and really compete with like PSG, who I think should be the favorites, Real Madrid, who are going to do business, and Xabi Alonso, Barcelona, who, you could argue they should be the favorites too next year.
Yeah.
Just these top teams. Man City is going to try to come back and do some kind of revival. Arsenal are going to have something to say about the way they went out. So still, Inter, it's a shame to see because they're the best Italian team and these type of competitions. I know they didn't win Serie A, but I still say they should be the best Italian team in the Champions League. I don't see where Italian football really makes its way in this competition next year, unless like Go McTominay goes on a crazy
I was
run.
about to say Go McTominay about to carry them to a title.
Go crazy. I feel like this is a true changing of the guard in Europe, because now I feel like every team watched PSG spank one of the best teams in Europe across the last few years in like such dominant fashion. So they're now their schedule got pushed up 2 years. PSG is now the best team. Inter's out the window, and all the other teams who couldn't even sniff Inter are like, wait, hold up, how are we supposed to beat PSG?
Yeah.
So I feel like really interesting thing. I feel like this really is going to send shockwaves through the European continent in terms of football over the next couple of years.
But even I also want to know, even the Prem, bro, even the biggest teams, the Prem, like Liverpool, I don't know how they would stack up against this PSG team. I don't think they would be able to if they were in a final.
And
Thinking about Man City, like you said, the future, Arsenal as well, maybe even Chelsea at that point. Like, look, they're all good and growing in their own right, but based off their performance and the youth of this team, I don't know. If I was a betting man, I might be betting on PSG next season.
Yeah, they look scary. And Liverpool, like, I'm glad you brought up Liverpool. They're probably going to be the hardest to really predict, because the way they play is going to probably be so different. Just because on the second year under Slot, bringing in Frimpong to replace Trent, that's a completely different style of player. Like, it's night and day the way they play. So I don't even know how Frimpong and Salah, like how that relationship is going to work. Mm-hmm. If they bring in Wirtz, who looks like they're like on the cusp of bringing in, and whoever they bring in to be their new striker, that's Wirtz, Frimpong, and a new striker potentially coming in. Kirkez, I think, is going to be their new left back. It looks like that deal is close to getting done. Liverpool, they could be scary next year, but still, that's players who have to gel. That's like, and young players.
And it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
That's assuming Salah is the Salah of this year, and this is Salah's best season ever by a margin. Like, there's no guarantee Salah is putting up however many goal involvements. I think it was like 58 in 52 games or something this year. There's no guarantee he's that good to carry the attack again. So PSG are looking very scary. But speaking of Liverpool, speaking of Barcelona, and speaking of PSG, I think a very important conversation to have after the Champions League final. A lot of people were saying before the final, who's going to win the Ballon d'Or? Liverpool knocked out in the quarterfinals, but Salah had an amazing year in the Prem, won the Prem comfortably. Rafinha, GA through the roof, but arguably not even the best player on his team. But Champions League, one of the best players in the Champions League, one of the best players in La Liga, won everything in Spain there is to win. Lamine Yamal, to me, the best player on his team. Super young, maybe his stats aren't the best in comparison, but very influential in the biggest games for his team, won everything there is to win in Spain. I'm going to throw in Pedri there, although I think they're not really going to respect midfielders again. But Dembele, treble now if he wins the Champions League, which he has now done in France. I will throw in the slight caveat that I don't want to hate on Ligue 1 too much. I know that's your job, but because that league is so dominant for PSG to win, you do have rested players coming into these tournaments versus like Inter, who are fighting for Serie A, and Barcelona, who are fighting for La Liga to the last couple of days of the season. PSG are rested weeks ago for these competitions, so their trouble is a little bit different, in my opinion, just slightly, but still. He won it. All these players were going for it, and he got it done. and he was the best player on his team across the season, and had a great performance in the final. He didn't score, but still, he was amazing in the final. So, I guess my question is, in your opinion, if today, after the UCL final, who is your leader in this Ballon d'Or race? I don't know if the Club World Cup is going to end up coming into effect or not, whatever, but
Yeah.
who do you think should take it at this point in time?
You know, I'm excited by this question because I feel like a lot of years the question of Ballon d'Or, it's usually between like two players. But I feel like this year you actually have a solid roster of players that are deserving. And I'm honestly, I'm very split, but if I had to pick one, it would have to be Yamal probably, purely because of the fact that, and you know, like you said, maybe the stats don't show it, but watching him play, I mean, like I literally have not felt that magic since like Messi, like prime Messi. And when you see the skill and the talent and the way he can just carry his team, not even necessarily again with the stats, but even just like with what he does, like the energy he brings, something like that I feel like can be trophy worthy, especially with they still had a very good performance. I mean, they still won La Liga. Like, it's still very much deserving. Dembele, I probably would have firmly been behind Dembele if he had, like, I know it's kind of like, you know, what's the word? I don't know. Like, if he had a goal in the final, then I'd be like, all right, that's it. That tops it off for me, even though it's not really necessary. But I kind of agree with what you're saying about Liga. You know, they have more time to rest. Like, that treble, that what they do there, it still isn't at the level of like if Barca did the same thing or if Liverpool did the same thing. So I purely just off instinct and, you know, what I feel when watching these games, it's got to be Yamal.
Interesting. I have some thoughts on that, but before you do, I just want to hear. I know you don't watch as much, Eric, so maybe you don't have an opinion necessarily on who should be the definitive winner. But just in terms of how, like, something like the Ballon d'Or is, like the criteria, people like to involve like goals and assists, trophies, narrative. Narrative's a big one. Like the PR going for Ballon d'Or winners is always crazy. But like for you personally, how much would you factor in like the amount of trophies you won versus like eye test? Who was the best player when I'm just watching them? Who's the best player versus like just raw stats, like things like that? How much you think those kind of things should weigh in? 'Cause I guess something similar to like an MVP in the NBA. I'm sure people have those same kind of questions. So, what would you think? But less trophies to win in the NBA.
Right. I think that's the thing. Like the fact that there's no concrete criteria, and I feel like every year it's kind of subject to change. Whether it's like in the NBA, for example, people are saying SGA won this year out of voter fatigue, right? Like people say on paper, Jokic passed the eye test. Jokic was the most valuable player. But you have SGA, who's the best player on what I would say the best team in the NBA, which I also think is a valid thing to say, you know? It's hard when it comes to soccer because it's like the range is just a whole lot wider. You're dealing with a ton of leagues. You're dealing with just different, I don't know, just different playing fields. You guys were just talking about how, you know, how does Liverpool match up against this PSG side? So it's kind of hard to really put all the players on the same field and to just single one out and say, okay, this is the best player of the year. I think the Champions League is definitely like gonna be probably the biggest tournament that you're gonna be looking at in a year like this year where there is no World Cup. You know, so you have to look at performance during those big tournaments, and I think, I don't know, it's a tough one to really, you know, decide, but I think it has to be, if I were the one that had to like lay out the criteria, I think it has to do with, okay, how much have you won? May not necessarily have to have won a trophy. Like obviously if you've won your league or if you won the Champions League, yes, that should count for something. That should put you at the forefront of the conversation. Um, but I also think like if there's any way to measure just like and I know that soccer analytics have their own way of doing this too, like how much better do you make your team, or like how effective, how efficient of a match do you have on a consistent basis. I think all those things have to matter. But yes, I think trophies always have to be in the conversation because if you don't win, you can have the best game ever, you can have the best stretch of games ever, but if you don't win, no one's gonna remember. So I think winning has to, if I had to do, if this were some kind of like, I don't know, like percentage or like this like whatever, right? I would say maybe like 50% maybe has to fall on winning, and then like the remainder would have to be a split between like individual stats, um, and like individual like efficiency and all that stuff. But I think winning has to, I would say, has to be the biggest part of that. I guess percentage has to hold the most weight.
Mm, that's interesting. Yeah, and I guess in that sense, without saying it, because I know you don't have as much of an opinion necessarily on these candidates, but that breakdown kind of leads toward Dembele, who won the most and won the biggest trophy, and he also has the stats and the eye test and all that kind of stuff too. Um, but for me, if I had a vote, like if it was like you had to lock in this vote for a player, I'd have to give it to Lamine Yamal as well. It's tough because, like you said, the Ballon d'Or is, to me, the Ballon d'Or is one of the most inconsistent trophies in terms of like what the standard is.
Very.
Every year, it's so different. Like why this player won versus this player, it's so different. But if we're saying the Ballon d'Or is supposed to represent for that year the best player in the world, actually watching the games, there's no player on the planet I thought has been better than Lamine Yamal over the course of this season. Now, let's do process of elimination. Pedri, I think actually he might have the strongest argument, but midfielder, they're never gonna have the stats. I think he's not a real contender. Rafinha, I watched Rafinha and Yamal both on the pitch against Inter Milan in that second leg especially, and Barcelona were feeding Lamine Yamal the ball while Rafinha stood on the other side of the pitch and watched. To me, you cannot be in the Ballon d'Or conversation, and of course he still is. He's still top 5, but you clearly, to me, when it mattered the most, you weren't the number one guy on your team. Yamal, as a 17-year-old, was the guy who was driving your team forward. So Rafinha, you're out of here. I don't care about the GA. I don't care. You're out of here. Salah, probably the best GA season out of all of these players, won the Prem. So you have to give him that as well, because that's probably the hardest league. Maybe people will say maybe the two-horse race in La Liga is up there, but won the Prem comfortably. But bounced in the quarterfinals by PSG, and I think the head-to-head, that's going to be held against you. You got bounced by the eventual winners in Dembele. So if people are going to compare you and Dembele 1-to-1, Dembele bodied you and also won everything domestically. Not on the same difficulty level, but GA is still nothing to sniff at. So I think Salah is going to be tough for him to win it. He has the good PR though, so I'll give him that. He does have good PR. He's definitely top 3 for me, but I think he's probably going to be third.
Third
And I
easy.
think realistically, although I'd vote for Lamine, I think Dembele winning the Champions League is just going to have to push him over the edge. We'll see what happens with the Club World Cup, because I don't know how much that actually is going to take into effect. I don't know how much people respect that competition. So we'll see if anything crazy happens there. That's like, okay, now this player went wild and carried his team to the Club World Cup. Maybe we have to put him over the edge. But for me, it's really a two. Salah, I don't even want to disrespect him. It's a 3-horse race, but really for me, it's between Lamine and Dembele.
It's a 2-horse race.
Yeah,
No disrespect. It's a 2-horse race.
Between Lamine and Dembele. And Lamine, to me, eye test is the best. But I think in those other categories, and Lamine does have some PR to him too. And I think him being young,
But that's deserving.
does it?
That's
Yeah,
deserving.
it is just ridiculous. You can't hold that against him. But I think if we're talking about purely on paper, Dembele has the resume from the season. So it's going to be very interesting. But there's one player who actually won the European Golden Boot, actually. We didn't talk about him because he is not in this conversation. Kylian Mbappe, you're on fraud watch. Kylian Mbappe, and I we cannot end this conversation without talking about this guy. And I don't even want to hate him. He's one of the best players to watch at times. I loved when Mbappe was coming up through Monaco and the French World Cup 2018.
Most inconsistent best player in the world.
Literally. But Mbappe, if you even sniff the top 5, if you sniff Dembele, if you sniff Yamal, if you sniff Salah or Rafinha, even Pedri, I don't care. If you sniff any of these players, it's rigged. It's rigged. I don't. It's rigged. Mbappe, you were on PSG. They gave you everything. I'm pretty sure the president was tucking you in at night in Paris, bro. They gave you everything. You abandoned them on a free to Real Madrid, who just won the Champions League. You went there, you cozied up to Hala Madrid, whatever you were saying, bro, and you went over there to Madrid. And you lost the Champions League, getting smacked by Declan Rice free kicks to Arsenal, who just handily destroyed you and
ghosted that game.
The guy you brought into PSG, your French brother, who you came up with, everyone was comparing back in the day, Mbappe or Dembele, Mbappe smoked him, lapped him, and all of a sudden, all these years later, the guy you brought to PSG for the French project that you were so gassed for, you went to Madrid, all of a sudden you're Spanish, Mbappe went back to PSG, and they won the Champions League while you got bounced with Madrid. The common denominator is you. You can't win the Champions League. To me, that out of all the players, Mbappe has had the sorriest season out of all of them. I know he won the European
Which is crazy for his record too in the league, and like for Real Madrid, like scoring as many goals. Like it's crazy how it's almost as if it didn't happen. Because I have the same feeling of like, you know, even just watching him play from like the games I've seen, I'm just kind of like, like where it matters, he's not performing in the same ways that a Rafinha, that a Yamal, a Pedri, a Dembele, like he's not performing in that manner.
Yeah, and
it brings me back actually to, I want to take note of this. I saw a video on TikTok of Luis Enrique, you know, kind of talking to Mbappe one-on-one, telling him how he needs to drop back, defend, about the hustle, the drive to be a leader while he was at PSG. And I feel like just the end of this season is a culmination of Mbappe not taking that advice and not following that through. And it is a very poetic way for the season to end after seeing that video. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend checking it out, because I feel like just the emotions of it all make sense after that.
Yeah, that's a great way to summarize that, because it really just shows that PSG were better after you and Madrid were better before you. Now, I'm not saying that you make teams worse necessarily, because you're still one of the best players in the world. Nothing can take away what you did with France, and even what you did in 2022 in that final. To me, I would never disrespect Mbappe in terms of his big game play, because that final performance in Qatar was one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. But still, we can't deny that this is going to be a stain on your legacy because of the way these last two seasons.
I don't want to call it a stain just yet. I don't want to call it a stain. I think we need to wait a couple years to see what he does with Madrid.
It's a stain he could throw in the laundry.
But this is a wrinkle in the shirt. Okay, we gotta see if he gets that iron out.
It's not an irremovable stain, you know, but it's a little grease one maybe that you do a little work.
Need some OxyClean, you know. You gotta put it through a couple times.
Because he can go on to win 5 Champions Leagues with Madrid, and he'll be like, haha, what the hell are you talking about? It didn't matter. But as of right now, I know he broke his TV watching that final, bro. I know he was tight. He's putting on his story. Oh, c'est Paris. Oh, c'est content. Whatever he was saying at the time. I don't know. I don't speak French anymore. But I know while he was typing that, he was crying, bro, because he didn't win anything of importance this year. So that's someone we got to talk about in the future. Next season, Mbappe, we will be watching out. Xabi Alonso's new side. We want to see what Madrid are going to do. But yeah, that fun discussion on the Champions League. Any last points on this, or you feel like we covered it all?
And I mean, I think we covered it all. I mean, I hate to say it, we barely talked about Inter, but because there's nothing to talk about there.
Inter,
Nothing.
yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
They honestly don't even deserve the discussion.
They don't deserve the discussion. I saw a report that when they landed back in Milan, there was only one fan at the airport waiting for them. And honestly, after that performance, they're lucky they got that one fan.
honestly. Yeah, Inter, I'm sure we'll talk about them in the future, because especially if Inzaghi leaves, I'm very curious. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but about the future of Inter from this point forward, especially losing the league. They were on for a treble and they lost everything in the last few weeks. But yeah, there's not really much more to be said about them, because you really let down the neutral fan. Everyone was there looking for a great game, and you did not show up. You didn't deliver. At least give us something. Give us some fight. At least give us something we can walk away from the game like that was an amazing watch in terms of competitiveness.
Give something for your fans.
Something.
People travel to Munich. Like, you made it this far. Like, genuinely, something must have been said in that locker room, or something must have happened on the inside where their mental was just screwed from the get-go. Because there's no other explanation. There's nothing.
They were ghosting. They were just ghosting. Multiple players. If you told me, if you asked me if Martinez played that game, I'd be like,
I was just about to say.
I'm not sure if he did, honestly. And I've been gassing Martinez.
He did. I have the lineup up. He literally was in.
He did.
I cannot recall a single play, a single shot of him from the camera. Like, nothing. Bro was invisible.
Nothing. If you ask me if Barella played, I'd be like, I don't know. If you ask me if Dumfries played, I'd be like, I don't know. And I know all these players played, but they just were so non-factors that it was just really disappointing, especially after the tournaments that they've had. It just, you never could have seen that coming.
Yeah,
but
they're gonna need a crazy, potentially, transfer window if they get a new manager, because I imagine their whole system's gonna be a bit shaken up after this. Whether it's deserved or not, there will be changes. It's gonna be interesting to watch.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, they have a very unique system that kind of requires that coaching. So, yeah, that's a great point. But yeah, there it is. That's the Champions League final. Our entire season has been kind of building up to this moment. So thank you for everyone who came along with the ride. This is not the end of the podcast in terms of we're coming back next week, but this feels like a very big culminating moment for soccer. At least that's kind of marks the end of this season. We still got the NBA finals coming up, but I know the conversation about that's not going to be as excited as it might have been if a different outcome happened in the conference finals. But either way, thanks for rocking along with us every single week. We were here last week. We'll be back next week. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. The YouTube algorithm stuff. We very much appreciate it, and we'll catch you guys next week for some. I don't even know what we're going to talk about next week, honestly, because the finals probably won't be done by then.
And there are probably going to be some crazy transfers by next week.
Transfers. The Club World Cup will be starting soon. Yeah. The state of Kith. I wrote that down. We'll talk about that. So we got some stuff to talk about. Okay. But see you guys next week. Peace.
Yes, sir. Thunder in 5. By the way, Thunder in 5. Thunder in 5.